gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Carter, for 5 minutes.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Goffman. Mr. Goffman, if in looking at EPA's proposed tailpipe rule with its timeline and its scale, it's hard to say that it intends to do anything more than just ban internal combustion engines. I mean, I have to be quite honest with you. This is one of the most egregious rules that I've ever seen the federal government come out with. And it's totally inappropriate. And I'm not saying that because I'm not a fan of EVs. I am a fan of EVs, but this is ridiculous. In fact, I'm so much a fan that the largest economic development project in the history of the state of Georgia is going to be in my district. It's under construction right now, an EV manufacturer, bringing in a $5.5 billion investment to bring 8,100 jobs and probably that many more in ancillary businesses. We're excited about it. Georgia's embraced this. We've embraced the battery plants, EV manufacturers, all of that. But we are not going to enact a tailpipe rule, not in the state of Georgia. That would be ridiculous, just like California and other policies that have more or less mandated EVs. There's no better example of the federal government picking winners and losers than what we're witnessing right here. No better example. And that is the last thing the federal government should be doing. I don't agree with it at all. Again, I feel like it's totally inappropriate. Why is this rule necessary? Explain to me why it's necessary, especially in the scale and the timeline that you've set out.
Well, thank you for that question, and thank you for articulating the concerns you raised. If I can just start with one point that we observed as part of our analysis, is that we project that that under this proposal, if it were finalized, we project north of 40 million internal combustion engine vehicles continuing to be sold in the new car fleet over the course of the 6 model years covered by this rule. So we obviously don't see this as either, certainly not explicitly and not even effectively, a ban on internal combustion engines. What this rule does is in many ways complement what the private sector and Congress have already begun to make substantial investments in, which is diversifying the on-road fleet so that it's not just internal combustion engines that relies on, in part, imported oil, but also domestic electricity. And in fact, as you know, Congress, less than a year ago, made substantial investments in the components and the raw materials to manufacture electric vehicles here in the United States.
Mr. Goffman, with all due respect, I understand the point you're trying to make, but I beg to differ. And you used the word diversify. To me, this does more than diversify. To me, this mandates. And there's a big difference between diversification and mandating.
Well, our intent with this rule is not to create a mandate. We don't see the Clean Air Act as doing anything different from what we did in this proposal, which is to set grams per mile emissions performance standards, which we based on what we see as available, affordable technology.
Do you feel like the internal combustible engines would be able to meet those, though?
We project that fleets that include both EVs and internal combustion engines will be able,
so the
on a
hybrids,
wide level, to meet these standards.
Well, I want to follow up on what my colleague from California just asked you about. Did you take in consideration any of the low-income families that rely on internal combustion engines to get to work, to get to school, to get to groceries, all of those things?
Well, we took into consideration the affordability of meeting these standards.
Well, look, I represent South Georgia. It's a vast area and a lot of traveling, and I mean, we need internal combustion engines in South Georgia, and we got a lot of low-income families, and this is going to have a major, major impact. And again, I want to reiterate that I feel like this is one of the most inappropriate and blatant examples of the government picking winners and losers that I've ever witnessed. But I do appreciate you being here, and I appreciate your work. With that, I'll yield back.